And then Hurricane Katrina blew in, and that really sort of changed everything.
The media is not capturing the real situation with the animals down in the Gulf.
Tell me what's going on.
And what's happening is the media is doing little fluff stories.
I know.
And promoting these big animal organizations so they get the money and the promotion.
HSUS has raised millions.
12 million.
And all they're doing is blocking the grassroots rescuers and the other rescue groups.
And the real heroes here is the military, if you could believe it. And they're sneaking to help people. And the small organizations.
Ladies, why does the military have to sneak to help animals and...
Well, because they didn't get the command from the president. So what we're going to ask is that all your listeners call the White House. I even have the number to ask that they get the official command.
Most animals in Katrina died in their homes, in their cages, because they trusted Humane Society of the United States to come in and pick them up.
I don't support big, rich organizations anymore. I'm too educated.
I'm sorry, Best Friends, North Shore Animal League, small volunteers that were with no organizations, like Maggie McWayne, came in with their own money, did more rescuing than HSUS, who left in October, by the way, while still asking for money.
There was a lot of horror down there for people, for animals, and as somebody who's not necessarily animal welfare, animal rights, animal rescuer, it's just a matter of, there were awful things happening to people and animals alike.
We were in the lower 9th Ward a lot, which was flooded. We did I waded through water to get dogs off of porches. A lot of breaking and entering to get dogs out of yards, out of houses.
Frankly, the strongest feeling I got down there as I left was, my God, there are these incredible groups doing a ton of work that I've never heard of.
I walked into this house, and because you're so focused on what you're doing, you're not really paying attention to what's around you. You're just looking for an animal. And I walked into this one room. There's a dog on the floor, dead. And I look around the room, and I realized I didn't walk into this room through a doorway. I walked in through a hole. The dog, in a terror-stricken panic, trying to get out of that house, broke through the wall.
The whole thing that happened with Katrina, I think that it had to happen, but in some ways now, if people ever find themselves in a situation like that, they'll be able to take their animal with them. I could never leave mine.
If it's too dangerous for me to be here, it's too dangerous for my animals. Now, I understand there were stories that National Guard at gunpoint told people to get on the bus and leave their animals. My attitude is different. I go, my animals go. My animals don't go, I don't go.
Fuck you, leave my animal. I mean, fuck you, I'm taking my animal.
Look at the face. How could you leave that? How could you not rescue that? How could you ignore your humanity and turn away from that? The groups that had all the money, the SPCA and HSUS, they weren't the ones on the ground in the field.
I don't see any cuts or wounds on.
There wasn't one show that gave credit to any other organization except for HSUS.
I guess part of the problem is, we're our own worst enemy because we weren't there for the press. We didn't hold press conferences. We didn't make ourselves visible. We didn't take the time because we didn't have the time.
Yeah, HSUS likes to scoop in and take a lot of credit for a lot of stuff. And they're very big and they're very powerful.
The Humane Society of the United States has no relationship to any animal shelter anywhere with the name Humane Society. They don't run a single pound, a single adoption shelter anywhere. They advertise as though they do. They send direct mail fundraisers with pictures of puppies and kittens. It says we have to support pets, we have to adopt, spay, neuter. And so people write checks thinking, oh my goodness, this is going to support my local. No, nonsense. The money goes to a $100 million a year animal rights lobbying group in Washington.
But HSUS keeps saying this is the worst disaster. No, correction. This was the biggest success for them. They earned more money off this disaster, and we have to stop that. Every time a disaster comes, along comes these monsters that prey on you, and they're hoping for disaster because they prey on your emotions, collect that money.
How much money did you raise on the backs of those animals in New Orleans, and you left those animals?
Worth magazine, a few, maybe it's been a couple years ago, did a story on HSUS, and they wound up giving them a D because they spend over 50% of their income on fundraising.
They have not opened up their books at all for Katrina, let alone what they make.
It's against the law. If you ask a 501 where the hell the money is, they are required by law to tell you. So HSUS, to me, and to a lot of animal rights people, feels as if it's turning into N-fucking-Ron. You want me to say Enron without fucking?
Well, now that the Louisiana Attorney General's office is investigating the use of the donations taken in during Katrina from the Humane Society of the U.S. and also from the Red Cross, frankly, that's a lot of do-re-mi they took in, and they need to be accountable for how they spent it.
They were the lead agency. They failed. Please do not let this HSUS ever head a disaster again. They failed. They should pay for this. There's no excuse for it.
51 years ago, when the HSUS started, they were here to reduce overpopulation and abuse. 51 years later, and nearly $10 billion donated to these national organizations, that's still our problem. And we've seen really virtually no improvement at all to speak of. I think that's sad. I think the world is a better place with them than without them, but I do believe that to whom much is given, much is expected, and they have fallen very short.
I think if more people understood that a check that you write to the Humane Society of the United States doesn't go to your local animal shelter, that money would dry up in a minute.
Because if you're still contributing after this movie or after any of this to HSUS, Humane Society of the United States, and Howard Stern did endorse us, or PETA, or any of these other big corrupt organizations that are just an empty shell, they're another Enron, then you're an idiot.
I wonder why PETA and HSUS didn't want to do this movie.
Yeah, do you think they had something to hide?